will switch right now to the Q&A session. So let me
That's good.
add another speakers. So we have everybody here. Eli, Shparna, you here?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, Subarna.
Okay,
Hello.
okay,
Right.
beautiful. So let's have this Q&A session, and let's start with Suparna with your talk. So the first and like the one of the most like widespread, let's say, question that comes up after your talk is what are the benefits of using dedicated solutions like ECUA test and Espresso, for example, like these frameworks, comparing to using Appium as a like unified solution.
Yes. So what happens in APM is that it limits our testing to a major extent. Like we cannot do explosive testing with APM, whereas with XUI test and Espresso we can do a lot more. It starts from visual test, where we will be able to. In fact, it starts even with unit testing before that, visual test, and then with the SDK testing, with the mocks, and with the staging environment. And in APM, what happens is that we just touch the UI test with the staging environment max. But here, what is happening is that we are touching all the components such as visual testing, functional testing, non functional testing, and the coverage will be huge. It is never that you will see that this is not working or that is not working. It always works because everything that is developed can be automated in XUI and Espresso. Now, what happens with APM is that either sometimes the support will be missing because of lot of it's a third party, and again it is an additional layer that is using XUI and Espresso as layers within APM. So it is also slow comparatively, and someone has to implement certain things in order for APM to work. Let's say I am doing something as simple as login screen. So what happens in login screen? It might look very generic that it's just a login screen. You just have to write one script for Android and iOS. But when it becomes complex, let's say the iOS or the Android apps are a little more complex than that, then APM has its own limitation. We cannot exceed after a certain point. So APM is a good shift right kind of testing tool. But if you have to go for shift left, it starts at the very basic at the developer's environment. So shift left, at the end of the day, it is like as soon as the developer is committing, immediately the test should pass or fail based on what has changed. So that is not possible with APM. APM has its own limitation, limited scripts, limited test suits, and again it takes time. Again, everything is UI based, and UI testing is good, but it has to be limited. It cannot be exhaustive. So in order to have a proper testing pyramid kind of experience where we have maximum number of test cases, at the same time we are optimizing to a major extent at a minimal time, then I think XY test and Espresso would be better. Also, APM and Selenium is something which only QS have exposure and only QS can automate. Here, everyone can automate. The entire dev team can sit and automate whenever there is a, we have a, like we work as one team. We are not different teams. So that is the difference. One is shift left, the other is kind of shift right. And here also again we have other factors like visual testing, functional testing, security and performance localization, which is not possible in APM. It will be very tedious to do execute all of that.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. So the major one of the major things is that basically Appium uses these both frameworks underneath, and it is better to like to eliminate an additional layer because the more layers we have, the more brittle solution can have in the end, like automation solution. Okay, thank you for your answer. And getting back to the mobile world, we have also another question for you, Suparna. So,
Yes.
would you recommend mobile visual regression testing for the end-to-end tests? So, which tools are you use for visual testing?
Like we can go ahead for licensed tools again. However, there are open source tools in the other world. which is like Uber, and Uber's snapshot test is one popular one, and again Google also has visual test suits. So we can use those which are open source, because again we are relying on XUI test and Espresso framework levels at the moment. And I personally observed is that many teams are able to detect issues right in the unit test level. So when we say can we accommodate that in the E2E test suite level, what we can do is, because ideally if we get because visual tests are also faster than E2E tests. So what we can do is keep it above unit test. So we have to make sure that unit test is the first foundation. The second foundation is the visual test, because again they're just capturing screenshots, comparing instant results. Whereas as soon as it comes to E2E test, it is going to be time consuming. It is going to launch the app, no matter how fast the tool is. In fact, XUI test and Espresso are quite faster than APM and other tools out
Mm-hmm.
there. However, that will launch the app, that will at least load the screen. So all that is little more, like it takes few more seconds compared to visual test. So while we can consider visual test as part of E2E, it's good to have as a second foundation before E2E, because of the
Mm-hmm.
time saving section of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot. So let's go to another question. Suparna, we have another question to you. Um, what about running automation on the physical or in simulated devices? It's like the uh, one of the first questions that comes to my mind when I hear about any kind of mobile automation, because it's like the way where you run the test.
True. Ideally, we should be running in both the places. However, having it in the simulator and emulators is the fastest. Now, it
Mm-hmm.
also depends on the type of app we are using. Let's say the
Mm-hmm.
apps are having some inbuilt like native features, let's say the camera or something else, or upload or something like that, like some native features of the app. If you're using something like that, then probably we will have to go for simulated device, physical devices. But let's say it's a news app or something where we do not have to really bother about the native feature of the phone. In that case, I think simulators would be fine, simulators or emulators. However, we even if we are using simulators and emulators, even then we'll have to keep track once in a while that it is also working in the physical device. So what we used to do in different projects is that, let's say something is purely native or React Native kind of environment where nothing to do with like native feature of the phone, then in those cases what we do is we usually run day and night, like not even day and night, it's on every dev feature. Like every dev branch will be running our tests, so it's easy to do it on the simulators and emulators that way, because directly it is integrated and it's also fast. However, once in a while, let's say in a week or so, like we do run on some cloud devices or at least physical devices in our local machines to check that nothing that is broken all of a sudden here and there, so that we're always safe at the end of the day. However, there will be cases, some exceptional cases where the app is not supposed to work on jailbroken devices or something on simulators or emulators. In such cases, we will have to go by certain environments. However, again, it all depends on the type of app we have and what the type of app we are testing. Again, the automation also depends a lot on the type of app we have. Let's say it's something on web view based kind of app where we already have something running in Chrome, in web devices and everything, and then we are reusing that component in Android and iOS in a web containers in form of an app. Then also appium could be a good candidate there, because XUI test and Espresso may not add much value in those cases. But and using appium in that case will be like reusing some of the Selenium components. But that being said, in those cases, emulators and simulators might be little tedious to
Mm-hmm.
synchronize. In this particular case, what happens is that, let's say we are going with XUITest and Espresso, then the direct approach is to go by simulators and emulators if the app is not really using much of the native features. But we have to ensure once in a while that the physical also is working fine. Because again, we cannot run on real devices on every dev PR. That means it will get very expensive as well. So keeping cost in
Mm-hmm.
sync, on a like every dev PR simulators, if there is a bondage, then we'll have to go for physical devices.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Thanks. And another question to all of you that you all working on the fast paced environment when the change comes in the matter of like seconds, or at least minutes. So the question is, who is responsible for the maintenance of the tests of any tests, like these test levels, and like is especially for example for a unit test, it's obviously like the developer, of course, like in 100% almost, it's a developer part. But what about other types of tests? And also, what about infrastructure? Who is responsible for working with infrastructure?
Yeah.
Uh,
S-
who wants
So
to start?
for
Yes,
us, for
Eli,
instance,
please.
yes, sorry for jumping forward, but
No, that's
for
good.
us and I work in quite big company. Um, the infra is built by quality engineers, automation engineers, the test themselves by developers, product owners, PMs, mainly because the infra we build is language based. Like if you're familiar with Cucumber, JBehave,
Yeah.
I mean, they all provide the level of abstraction that anybody can use this to add, um, modify, change the tests. Okay, it's very easy to understand them and modify as needed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but more importantly, whenever something is broken, the developer responsible for the bug has to find the right person to fix the test alongside its own code.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
In our
sure.
cases, we have clear defined DevOps and QA teams. So
Mm-hmm.
generally, DevOps are the guys who know a little bit QA, but they primarily are developers. But their aim, basically their primary work is to ensure that the entire DevOps setups, the infrastructures, the servers, they all are up and running, contacting with each other, talking to each other. QA are the custodians of all the test cases. So I always say that test case is basically the outputs of QAs, right? Just like a good document is in, or the good code is output of a developer, test cases are outputs of a QA. So until the same QA is working in the system, he is the custodian of the test cases. So whenever something change that happen, the QA has to find a time. Maybe that time has to be taken in consideration within a release cycle, or sometimes what we
Mm-hmm.
do is when there are a lot of changes, we create a 1 week zero release, right? There is so from release 9 till release 10, there is a zero release or 1 week of a slack time where all the maintenance needs to be done. If it is auto, and because manual cases when they are getting updated, your automation scripts also need to be updated. So that also happens in parallel. Some projects, because we are into offshore, some projects are very small, where the same guy is the manual QA and same guy is the automation person. So he needs more time. And then we see the criticality, like which test case needs to be updated first because of the criticality, and which are the simpler ones he can do in his free time. But in some larger projects, we have separate manual and automation teams as well. So as soon as the manual case gets updated, a flag gets generated, and the automation guy needs to jump in at the same time. So, but whenever some infrastructure issues happen, DevOps is the first guy where we go. If they can't, then as my friend has said here, the developers need to actually come in, and we say that
Mm-hmm.
okay, we need your help in setting up these environments. The branches are not getting merged, and all those kind of typical issues that we face every day. Do that. And adding to it, just the QA environments, like especially the automation ones, as he has said again, whether like for example, the most of the automation we do is TestNG. It's in the Eclipse ID, TestNG base, Selenium on top of it, or Selendroid on top of it. And the other set that we do generally is Ruby Capybara RSpec framework combination, which primarily helps in cloud-based Salesforce applications also. So they are the two popular ones which we use. So generally QAs are technically sound enough to do all these kind of installations and setups on their machine. So if anything wrong happens there, if some updates come in or some classes are not functioning, so they are technical enough to handle those kind of things as well. So it's a combination of things, I would say. But whenever someone is stuck anywhere, dev is the last guy who we call ultimately. My Eclipse is not running. Can you help? My DevOps is not running. Can you help? Something like that.
Yeah, thanks. And what about you, Suparna?
Yes, in our case, because we are using XCTest and Espresso, the infrastructure, let's say if it is configuration related, any changes happened, we do look into it because we are the right people for the test failing or anything anywhere. And we also
Mm-hmm.
get alerts and everything. So let's say there is a PR and there is a dev PR and there's something breaking, some test is failing there.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, what is the two reason is that either the test is failing because of a dev change that happened, or that something has changed on the mock layer or something else, or the API changes somewhere else because of which the test is failing. So immediately the test is updated to make it pass. So
Mm-hmm.
the agenda is not to pass the test, but to identify what has changed. And in the process, we are also updating our test cases on the spot. And in our cases, because we are already in the dev environment, the developer doesn't have to rely on us to wait for us to get our time and all that. So the developer will try his best to fix it on the spot. If he cannot fix something, we will always pair up and get that fixed. In certain cases, what happens, because it's a very big dev team we have here, again in different modules. If there is a
Mm-hmm.
cross mod issue, let's say in our team we have not done anything, but some other team have done it and we are facing the issue of it, then what we do is we try to identify what has changed where. And on the spot, we will be able to rectify as well what has happened. Let's say it's another team, we will have to pair up with the other team after figuring out what has changed. So in general, what usually happens in our case is that because we are already in the dev environment, we don't have the dependency on QA dev or such. Everyone will be able to fix it, whoever can identify the issue and solve it. So it has happened in the past that we also have fixed the issues. As soon as I've identified this test is failing, we will identify what has changed, fix it on the spot, raise a PR. The developers will anyhow like review the PR because it's their environment as well. So and the thing is that it becomes very fast paced. Like everything is very fast. If even if there is an issue, it is
Mm-hmm.
instantly spotted and fixed. And that way, the test automation scripts are also updated on a daily basis. So that
Mm-hmm.
is what is happening in our case. We don't have the dependency of Cucumber, Selenium, APM. We
Right.
don't have all of that.
Right.
Anyone can do anything in here.
I think most of the teams are now progressing towards that also. Even in the QAs
Yes.
also, I think there is a lot of discussion going on between QAs becoming technical QAs, because of the way there was
Mm-hmm.
a huge bottleneck that, oh, we are manual testers and we cannot proceed beyond that. We have put everything in the ticket. Now it's up to your responsibilities. But now with
Yes.
technical QAs coming in, I think QA is also getting much more updated. They are actually supporting developers in a lot of things that Suparna you just mentioned. So that's the ideal team where anyone can do any other's job. That's the best part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as a like wrapping up the our conversation, the last question is, which maybe courses or books or resources you can recommend to get this technical knowledge. I'm like asking more about, like, for example, to do the chaos testing, you need to understand the architecture of the system. Without it, it is hard to come up with scenarios on when some service will go down. For doing an effective this shift left testing, you need to talk to the developer on their language. So you need to understand not only like programming language on the like basics, but you need to be a developer. Let's say maybe not 100%, but in most cases. So which, in your opinion or from your experience, which, for example, books are the most effective? Because there are like a lot of on the market, but you can name like the most influential on you.
I can recommend a book published on O Relay. which is Chaos
Mm-hmm.
Engineering by Casey Casey Rosenthal, if I remember it correctly. Casey and Nora Jones.
Mm-hmm.
That is also available on Amazon. Also, that is quite interesting. I just write the name here in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Chaos Engineering by Casey Rosenthal and Nora Jones. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
you can. This has very good practical examples. I have seen couple of articles online, but never been through any other book. But this has real practical examples, and in a easy to do basically things. So people can not just read it; they can apply in their this. And the
Mm-hmm.
language is again very simple. So even if someone who has, I would say, not 100% command over English, even he can understand it quite easily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks a
And
lot.
these are QA people, so they wrote in a QA language.
Mm. That's great to have this book because it's like a lot of resources like that I search on chaos testing, but I didn't find like the actual book on the process from the day one to the last
While
stage.
I'm saying, I just logged in. Yes, it is it is available on Amazon. It's ebooks as well,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, it is there. It is there. Orile.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks.
I'm just sharing the URL as well. There you go.
Super. We will share it. So partner, what can you recommend?
So in our case, now we do have some Udemy courses, LinkedIn learning courses to start
Yes.
with the
Mm-hmm.
basics. So
Yeah.
that will help. And immediately, if we get into the playground or in reality, let's say we take a
Mm-hmm.
sample app, we have recorders in both Espresso and XCTest. To start with, the user can start with recorders, record and playback, and see what is generating. Because in
Mm-hmm.
general, if you see, even I have started from zero, no one taught me Swift or Kotlin. So what happens in general is that most of us will know Java or Python or one language for sure. So in that case, we'll be able to relate what is happening, what is changing, and there are some very good resources on Swift and Kotlin. And Swift and Kotlin is like 90% very similar to each other. They are like
Mm-hmm.
brothers and sisters, and because of that, we won't have that like difference of complexity of anything. What I will not suggest is any book or such because I don't think such things exist. And I have not done any iOS development course or anything. I personally have not done it. However, it will definitely help if we do it. But again, the courses would be suffice. What I
Mm-hmm.
personally recommend is that go through a lot of blogs in Medium, but personally by Medium. In Medium, there are a lot of blogs on mock server
Mm-hmm.
concepts, a
Right.
lot of
Right.
SDK integrations. So those help a lot. There are a lot of blogs on XUI and Espresso, and there are some native like Espressos and XUI pages as well by
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Google. That also is very handy. That has the full information. We don't really require third party tools as such, and I guess they don't exist as much because it's still new.
Yeah.
APM is widespread, but the concept of espresso and exuatist, people are not aware of the names even. So the awareness is
Mm-hmm.
still fresh, and we have to keep going. But however, the resources are enough. What we have in the website. And one thing that I suggest everyone is that go through the language. Exuatist is based on Swift, and the other one is based on Java and Kotlin. So they're not
Correct.
really that difficult. They're very efficient languages.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And Eli, what's your recommendation?
Well, I totally support what Sapar said. Really, it's 100% what I think.
Mm-hmm.
For the CICD, it's once again find somebody on Medium who talks about this, and that will get you through. That's the best approach for me. That's how I learned
Mm-hmm.
things.
So
Yeah,
now you know. Now you know. You just have to contact Suparna for all this thing.
Exactly.
yes, yeah.
I'm always
Just
available over LinkedIn.
Just
yeah, and many people are maybe hesitate to contact in LinkedIn and just ask questions because they think that maybe it's like not appropriate to ask a question or something like that. But there are you can contact a
there are.
person directly, or you can find the forum or let's say
Correct.
like a post and comment here. And in most cases, a lot of people are pretty open to answer the questions, no matter where they work, no matter how they like, let's say, um, how active they are on the internet, but they definitely will answer.
Yeah.
I can only add that
Uh, yeah, yeah,
whoever writes a blog usually expect to be contacted. They don't use
Exactly.
it just
Exactly.
to hear their own voice.
write a write a comment.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Like a writing comment.
Yeah, it's like the biggest thing that you expect when you write something on the internet, like the comment and some other opinion. Okay, thank you so much for these Q&A sessions, and for your answer, and thanks a lot for your talks. I think those talks will be available just after this day, and there will be a break and another block of talks at the QA Global Summit. Thanks a lot, and see
Thank
you.
you. Have a
Thank
have a
you.
great time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.